So we're joined here today by the father and son duo of John J. Grande and John S. Grande, certified financial planners with the Grande Financial Services and longtime contributors to Ophthalmology Times Money Matters column. Great to see you both.
Good to see you as well.
Good to see you. Great.
Thanks so much for joining us. And since we last spoke earlier in the spring, the coronavirus pandemic had only been with us a few weeks, and we talked then about the financial and emotional impacts of managing COVID in an ophthalmology practice. So it seems appropriate to flash forward now to September as thoughts turn to ophthalmologists, what they should be doing to prepare financially for the fall, an uncertain school year. We have a presidential election, the fourth quarter, of what has been an extraordinary year, to say the least. And so, in what has been an unpredictable year, how should ophthalmologists approach working on a financial plan or revisiting their financial plan, especially if they had been financially impacted by the pandemic? In other words, what should their portfolio look like in this time?
Well, that's a great question. And not that you didn't list enough things for us to be concerned about, but there's also the possibility of a second wave. So we might add that to the pile of the problems that we're facing. First off, it's hard to believe that almost 6 months have gone by since the last time you and I, when we started this. So much has happened. We've been locked down basically for half a year. And I find, one, it's amazing how we can acclimate so easily to life changes like this. I mean, one day you're traveling and you're out and you're living a normal life, and the next thing, completely unexpected, you can't do anything. I mean, your business could be closed. Yeah. You haven't been to my office in 6 months. It's just amazing, and yet somehow we do acclimate to it. Well, it's been a great learning experience for us, and I hear the same thing from a lot of other people. A lot of people tell me, well, since we've been home and we don't have a lot to do, we've become very much more introspective and start questioning maybe your values and things that are as important or more important than making money and running after things all the time. So we have really learned a lot about this. Although the one thing I think that became very obvious is the fact that panicking or emotions can definitely lead to bad decisions. I mean, we've always known that before. We saw it in 2001, 2008, but really never as much as this, because this was overwhelming somehow. Maybe people were worried about life and death, and it became, too emotional for them. I know personally, for all of our clients across the country, all the ophthalmologists that we have, out of all of them, only 2 panicked, and 2 people did get out of the market. They were allocated to certain exposure in the market, and they were supposed to stay with that, as the others did. They didn't, so they got out really almost at the low. And now that the market has come back to where it is, and in some cases higher than it was, in most cases, they're asking, well, should I get back in now? Should I get back in now? How can what their losses were real losses. It wasn't a paper loss, where the other clients that didn't get out, their losses were paper losses. And now not only do they not have losses, but they actually are ahead of where they were back in those months. And so what do you say to somebody? Oh yeah, get in at the high. So what they're doing is reversing the law. What you're supposed to do is you buy low and you sell high. And panic can actually get you into selling high and buying, selling low and buying high, which hurts the plan. So it's so important to have a plan. And I know, John, if you want to go into the benefits of that,
Absolutely. So thank you. So we did see people make some mistakes, and we saw that again, like my father said, in 2008, 2001. One of the things that we find very helpful is to have a plan in place. And we think it's always important to have a plan in place, but given how much volatility there's been, we think it's more important now than ever. So in a so-called normal year, we may look at a plan once or twice to make sure the goals are still the same. The portfolio allocation is still in line with the target allocation. The overall probability of success, which is what we look at, is within a comfortable range, and that there have been no big changes to the financial or personal life of the client that need to be addressed. In an unprecedented year like we've seen in 2020, we think it's more important than ever to review that plan, and even more often than once or twice. So in order to give the clients some peace of mind and give them some advantages, one of the things we really think the plan does is it gives you the ability to model different scenarios to see how the success rate has been impacted. So if you feel like your portfolio is down a certain amount and you're not sure if your goals have been adjusted or now your probability is lower, being able to go in there and say, we have been able to determine the probability of success given the new goal, possibly retiring earlier. So the probability is within a comfortable range. They have a peace of mind of knowing they are able to retire earlier. And if not, they can determine what goals are more important and adjust the plan. Another reason it's so important to review the plan during these volatile times is to ensure the asset allocation is still appropriate given your risk tolerance and time horizon. It's important to develop a target portfolio as part of your financial plan and only take the amount of risk necessary to provide you with an acceptable probability of success. That's going to be different for everyone. It depends on your unique situation. But regardless of your portfolio's allocation, if you were in cash, you would have seen a deep and steep decline at the onset of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. So given the markets, this has added a lot of the emotional strain over the past several months with these large swings that we've seen. It was very difficult for doctors to understand what was happening with the virus and their practices, no less seeing their portfolio values plummet in some cases. The market had one of its fastest and deepest bear markets in history. The crash began on February 20th, and by March, markets worldwide were down 25 to 30%. With this as a backdrop, one of the most important pieces of advice we can offer, as my father mentioned before, is to not let your emotions dictate your investment decisions. Time and time again, individuals will sell out of stocks when the pain is at a point they can no longer tolerate, and they are in essence locking in those losses, and in most cases not able to get back into the market before it goes back up again. As we mentioned, only a couple of our clients did this, but we're in a very tricky position now where we see the market is now climbing and we're trying to help the client get back to their target portfolio. The last thing we want to do, however, is get them in when the market has now rebounded. And if we see another pullback, they're not only going to have the initial losses, but they're going to have losses on top of that. So we really think that, and we saw that in April and May when the market rebounded very sharply. So if you had just gone to the sideline with the idea that, let me see if I can just wait this out a little bit, and then I'm going to jump back in when things start to go up, most people would not be able to do that, just based again on the speed of the increases, and the market a lot of times will go up as fast as it went down. Just an example to see how bad timing can impact the portfolio. If we look at a $100,000 investment in the S&P 500 from 2000 to 2019, if you were to stay invested for that entire 20-year period, your $100,000 investment would be worth $324,019, so a nice return. If you had missed the best 5 days during that period, your portfolio would be $214,950. If you missed the best 15 days, it's $127,102. If you'd missed the 25 best days over 20 years, your portfolio was only at $82,000. So actually less than what you started with. So it just really echoes the importance of trying to stay the course and not let your emotions get to you. Another area that you can review when looking at the plan, especially during these volatile times, is your expenses. Determine what your essential expenses are and what your discretionary expenses are. You want to make sure that you have the essential expenses covered whenever you can by as much predictable income as possible. This can include Social Security, if you have a defined benefit plan, rental income, guaranteed annuity income. I don't know, Dad, if you want to speak a little bit about some of the annuity guarantees that clients have been looking at, and there's usually a bad kind of rap about annuities, but in times like this, there are certain ones out there that we think are sometimes favorable to put it in as a strategy within the portfolio.
Well, I think one of the points is, of course, why people put them down is because of the fees. And they've been so restructured that there are actually products out there that have absolutely no fees at all, yet still offer the same protection. So they're worth taking a second look at this point.
Absolutely.
Good point.
So once you have the guaranteed, once you have those essential expenses taken care of, then you want to look at the discretionary expenses. These are things like travel, entertainment. Unfortunately, not a lot of that going on right now, but we're hoping that we'll get to a point in life again where we can actually get on a plane and go somewhere. I know the one thing my wife is most upset about is the travel aspect of everything going on. So when you have your expenses broken down into discretionary and non-discretionary, you then can take those non-discretionary expenses and use a withdrawal rate from the rest of the portfolio. So the nice thing about that is if we have a good market and your portfolio is higher, and let's say we stick to a 4% withdrawal rate or maybe lower, as the market goes up, you'll have more discretionary spending. But as the market comes back down, like we saw earlier this year, you'll actually have to tighten the belt because that percentage just stay constant. So it's a way to control what's coming out of the portfolio. We think that's a really good way to do cash flow planning. And as physicians are starting to look at, maybe I want to retire early, maybe, can I retire early? Looking at your expenses closely, listing them down, which is never a fun project, but I think it makes a lot of sense. And then trying to break them again into those essential and discretionary expenses. That again is something that we find is very helpful and does create some peace of mind for the clients as they're trying to plan out how are they going to actually cover those expenses if they do retire early.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, so let's kind of take a deeper dive into that, for ophthalmologists who may be nearing retirement or maybe just taking another look at their priorities that have shifted during these recent months. What are some unique considerations, for taking retirement or early retirement or even expanding or reducing, their hours in practice, just working towards that goal?
Sure. Good question. And working with so many ophthalmologists, many of our clients did see their practices either shut down or greatly reduced during the early stages of the pandemic. It's interesting as we've seen different areas of the country deal with the virus and its impact at different times. So we're here in New Jersey. We saw the largest impact early on, along with New York, but now we see practices back up to full capacity, which is nice. Other areas have spikes a little bit later, so those practices may have to be prepared for reduction in revenue and patients at a different stage. Overall, our experience with speaking to clients is that they took the original hit to revenue and have since seen patients and revenue at or close to pre-virus levels, which is a positive. So there was definitely a period where they did not have income coming in, which was very scary. There wasn't a clear picture of when that might start again. It's impossible to predict how the fall and winter will unfold and how the reopening may be impacted by possible increases in cases. I would say that overall, we've adopted protocols that make it possible to visit a doctor's office. I actually have my annual physical later today, and with the proper safety measures in place and testing, we can hopefully avoid the type of shutdown revenue losses we experienced in the beginning. We also have the potential for therapeutics and a vaccine, which will greatly reduce the possibility of a second shutdown. So we do think that there's reason for concern in the revenue loss. We don't know it'll be hopefully as severe as we saw when no one really knew exactly how this was going to unfold. So hopefully we see the practices maybe reduce if they have to, but still stay in the position where they can see patients and still have some revenue coming in. So as we dealt with the shutdown, practices we work with either continued paying staff, which was your other question, for the period they were shut down. Some took advantage of the PPP program to offset some of the potential impact to the practice for the loss of revenue and continued payroll and practice expenses. Others did reduce staff, but in most cases it was temporary and they were back to having full staff in place. So that was also a positive thing. And the physicians we work with, the smaller practices, are very loyal to a lot of their staff. And so they really wanted to make sure that they were taking care of them, even in the face of what was happening. It is important to have a clear picture of the practice's expenses and have contingency plans in place, but they're forced to once again reduce the patient load and practice revenue. So how long can you afford to stay solvent, keep the practice running when you do need to shut down again? So I think, most of our clients have done that, but just really know what your monthly expenses are, what your salary is for your employees, and how long can you stay viable, and when do you need to start making reductions?